Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. I hope you are well. We've got news on the acolyte of the World Economic Forum, their number one disciple, their fanboy, Klaus's mini me, in the news, telling CNN that we need more censorship. We've got to get rid of misinformation. That is our biggest problem that we have in America right now is we don't have enough censorship. His words, not mine. Let's do a screen share and get into the article. This from CNN. Mark Benioff, everyone's favorite CEO. And if you haven't seen my videos where I reference Benioff, he is there's no bigger fan of the World Economic Forum, to the point where even in a lot of his blog posts, he uses the exact same terminology as Klaus. They're always talking about stakeholder capitalism and that we need to move away from neoliberalism and free market capitalism. That's the path to destruction. We just have to give more power and control to the central planners, to the politicians, and to these corporate CEOs. So we don't have free market capitalism. We have corporatism, or something that, in my opinion, resembles economic fascism that we saw, we'll say, or that we've seen throughout history. And sure, you can have private ownership, but if those global elite are influencing the people that run those corporations, is it not one and the same? And the irony here is that when you actually do a deep dive into what stakeholder capitalism means or the ramifications, it just means that fewer profits are going to the shareholders and more profits go directly to Benioff, and he can spend those dollars in whichever way he sees fit. And so he has more control because he is controlling where those dollars are actually going. And therefore, it gives him more clout and more pull. And that's what this game at the end of the day is all about. This is the game that they're playing, and they're trying to spin it as though they are just these good Samaritans, and they're altruistic, and they just want what's best for the world. But at the end of the day, you see that conveniently, what is best for the world is also just happens to be what's best for Klaus and Benioff. Let's get into this article. Benioff bought time. Excuse me, wrong one here. We'll get to that one in a moment. So let's start off with this one. Oh, geez, these ads are, my goodness gracious. Tech billionaire says Facebook is what's wrong with America. And I think this is an interesting title because that's not really the direction that Benioff goes, although he uses Facebook as the number one answer, or the number one kind of problem, or the number one example, I should say. From climate crisis to the cerveza sickness, Benioff sees a common thread for what ails America today: deception that is allowed to spread like wildfire on Facebook. And he says all social media, by the way. But again, he's just using them as an example. The digital revolution really kind of has this world in its grips. And in that grip, you can see the amount of mistrust and misinformation that is happening, Benioff told CNN. Then we'll get into the fact that he bought Time magazine in just a moment here. But he says, look at how it's affecting the world. You can talk about politics, the political process, climate, about the cerveza sickness. In each and every major topic, it gets connected back to the mistrust that is happening, and especially the amount being seeded by social networks. It must stop now. So this seems rather benign until you hear about his solution. And his solution is that we just need more censorship. We need to ban certain people. We need to ban this information so it doesn't get out there into the masses. And then we can control the message and then make sure people are thinking only thoughts that are approved by, of course, himself, because he is the arbiter of right and wrong. You see, he is the one that we should all look to for our ethical and moral North Star. And that's the thread that all these central planners have in common. They think that you're way too dumb to make your own decisions. Therefore, they need to control your life because they are the enlightened ones. They're the only ones that are smart enough to understand the difference between right and wrong. You guys just can't understand that because your intellectual capacity is just not where theirs is. You are misinformed. You just haven't done the research, or you just aren't that intelligent. You don't have the IQ points. You haven't been enlightened like they have. And therefore, they should make all of your decisions for you. This is how they see the world. And I had a couple things highlighted here, and of course, they are now gone. I got to get a new highlighting tool here. But that's really the takeaway for this article, is that Facebook and social media, they are the biggest problems in the United States right now because they're not doing enough to censor misinformation. And of course, who decides what misinformation is? Well, that's going to be Mr. Benioff himself. So then he decides in 2019 to go ahead and buy Time magazine because we are in a crisis of trust. Now, I think this is really, now, by the way, look at this picture of Benioff. Let me try to blow this up. I'm not saying that you should trust a book by its cover, but come on. I mean, you going to trust this guy? Really? So we're kicking Ron Paul off of social media for the reasons we discussed yesterday, in that video. So Ron Paul is someone that we should not trust. But oh my gosh, look at this guy. He just exudes trust, doesn't he? Wearing all black. I mean, could anyone look more like Satan? I mean, honestly, sorry, Mark, but dude, you're doing it to yourself. Look a little bit less like Satan, and maybe people will trust you too. But regardless, I think it's ironic that he's talking about trying to increase the level of trust as though people will not only trust him, but they'll trust the World Economic Forum. Because at the end of the day, he's just kind of doing their bidding. He's a useful idiot. So I would strongly encourage all of you that are watching this video, if you haven't gone to the World Economic Forum's YouTube channel, check it out and see how many, or the percentage of upvotes they get to downvotes on their videos. You want to talk about mistrust? I mean, isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? Is there an organization on the planet Earth that is less trusted than the World Economic Forum? I don't think so. If there is one, I can't, or I don't know of them. And so Benioff is sitting there claiming that he and his cronies, the global elite, are somehow going to instill trust that is needed in the United States. But in order to do that, we have to make sure that we are censoring other groups who aren't as enlightened and don't have the greater good as their number one priority, like Klaus and Benioff. But really, I could go through this whole, and there again, Benioff is saying that he has no editorial, or he makes no editorial decisions whatsoever. And then who is our person of the world, or I'm sorry, Time person of the year? It's Greta Thunberg. I mean, come on. That's, again, Mark, let me give you some advice. Number one, don't look like Satan. Number two, if you want people to trust you, you can't sit there and say that, oh, no, I have no editorial control whatsoever. The number one CEO that's pushing this climate change agenda comes out and makes Greta Thunberg the person of the year. And you expect us to believe, Mark, that you had nothing to do with that? That's not how you get people to trust you at all. So the takeaway from this story is what we've been talking about on this channel a lot lately. And if you go through history and you look at the groups, the entities, the individuals like Benioff, who want to increase censorship, they want to silence any dissenting view, they want to crush the free market of ideas, and they want to have a monopoly on what is right or wrong. Have those people been the good guys, or have those people been the bad guys? Have they been on the wrong side of history or the right side of history? And as we know, once a person gets in power that has that type of belief system, it never ends well. And unless we get off this road to serfdom, unless we call out these central planners and Marxists, which is what they are, and they're using the exact same tactics, by the way. You know, what happened during, we'll call it 1930s Germany? You know, what happened in Stalinist Russia? They used propaganda to manipulate societal opinion. Well, how did they do that? Well, they basically bought out the entertainment business. They integrated themselves into the educational process, and they really tried to target kids and teens, future voters. What are they doing now? Have you looked at a comic book lately? You say, oh yeah, I used to love Superman, Batman, all these things when I was a kid. Yeah, try looking at a comic book lately. It's nothing but woke propaganda. See, and they're doing this intentionally. So my whole point is we've got to call out these central planners and Marxists, and we need to open up people's eyes as to the downside of giving these people more and more control. Because if we do that, it does not end well. It ends up with the United States looking exactly like Australia right now, if not worse. And that's just a totalitarian police state.